So,
well, like I said, you have to also put into context, Caesar, that black men don't get married on in general. So we're talking about a very limited subset. And I agree with mistaken. It's like there has to be a cultural shift, and it's got to be more male driven. The reason why we have unwed uh, births and stuff like that is it's male driven. Like men could easily just like they could easily propose to the women that they're with. So we have, like I said, I agree with what she's saying. Is we need a cultural shift. We need, I think that a lot of men have grown up without fathers in the home. That's an impact. The fact that our community doesn't really hold men accountable in terms of taking that final step, that's hurting us too. And then the men, we have to throw a third one in there. The culture of men is spreading a lot of negative propaganda. Oh, she's going to take half when only like 8% of black divorces even end in alimony. Black men don't have the money to be getting washed in the cleaners. And they don't really understand what divorce is, how it works. They're just scared, just like all the other modern men. They're scared of things that possibly could happen to them that probably won't.
So let me clarify. So it depends on the social economics. So if you are of a higher social economics plays a role in the marriage, right? So if you are of a higher social economic, then you do live longer. You're the same as white. You're a black man who's married to a woman. You will. So it seems to be a poverty thing more so than meaning poverty outweighs marriage. And I'm pretty sure that's because of healthcare, and stuff of that nature, maybe.
Wait, say that again, Shan. So
basically,
there's
Spanish still make less money than us. They're in more poverty than us. But why are they living longer then when married?
So let me just I didn't look up Hispanics. I was just it just said black and white.
It says black unmarried men live longer than married men.
The first one is said it. So then I put in do black married men live longer middle class. Hold on first. I'm looking up Hispanic. So it seems to be a class situation because what I did was I read the last article and it had a lot to do with poverty and all that kind of stuff. So then I changed the wording, right? And it changed the results. But let me put in here Hispanic, he said. Let's see. And I would argue that Hispanic men probably have a different diet.
Yeah.
I guess so. So what it was saying is that in the middle class men live longer than men in poverty. If so, yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so let me see.
I'm trying to still figure out because let me see. Let me put in by race only because everything that I've seen said married men live longer.
Yeah, I think to the points that y'all are making, when the more a household makes, that's going to probably increase the probability of
going to the doctor, being self-conscious, eating better food. It keeps saying it's the internal, it's not the external. And I would even argue too that even though some of these jobs are very manly, that stuff takes a toll on your body. You lifting all the time, like just think about the strain on a person's body, like that hardcore labor. You know what I'm saying? That'll break a person down too. But let me see. I'm trying to find Hispanic, but I can't find it because that's a good question.
Okay, it says married Americans thriving at higher rates. Now let me just see if it breaks it down by race. And I know another thing too that I wanted to look more into. I keep seeing it on IG and then I never take the time to look it up. But it appeared from what it was saying is that marriage in general benefit men more than it benefit women in terms of lifespan. It said that from what I saw, again, I said I didn't take the time to do a deep dive and research it, that for women, single women are living longer than married women. But for men, it had the opposite effect, where men are typically married men are typically living longer than unmarried men. But it was the opposite effect for women. So I'm not gonna lie, I didn't take the time to actually do my own research on that, but I have seen several videos on, Instagram about that.
Yeah, but ultimately,
Yeah,
Caesar, there has to be a cultural shift. If we keep things being status quo, we're not going to see anything different. We have to like step the standards up. And that, I think that's kind of like what's going on right now is like men are frustrated today because women are stepping, they were asked to, hey, choose better, do better, require more, and they are, and now the men are really upset because it's going to require more work to be done. But if you want to have more successful houses,
the men are upset with what?
I think men are, to a degree, are upset with the standards that a lot of women, the women that the men want to marry, women in general have raised the standards, and men they're struggling to meet that standard because of the want to, not because they can't. It's the want to.
And I also think too, and this is to a part of the men's argument, which I do agree
The
with.
system.
If,
The system is not in man's favor.
Hold on, if it's the majority of women, I would say setting reasonable standards of expectations. I think sometimes, if you watch IG, I don't know if this is the vast majority, but if you watch Instagram and social media, it portrays as if this is the vast majority of women that are setting unreasonable standards that men couldn't possibly reach. Like you want a 6'5" men, and they're in a minority just in general. The likelihood of you being able to marry a 6'5" man knocks majority of the men out the box, or somebody that's making six figures, right? When the majority of Americans across the board, especially Black men, are not making six figures. So you're knocking a whole nother group off. So I agree with men that if women are setting these unrealistic standards of expectation, then that's on the women that need to correct. It's not on them to step that up, because that's unreasonable when the vast majority is not going to fall in what they say that they're looking for. But I think for those women who are being reasonable about expectations, like I want a man, if I have my bachelor's, at the very least, I want him to have his bachelor's. If I'm making this amount of money, if I'm making, 70, 80,000, I at least want a man that can meet me at that financial level within reason. That could be a range where you're like, okay, I don't want no more than a $10,000 difference less than, or 15, like something reasonable. And I think the biggest thing that women are struggling with getting from men is because it's a patriarchal society, and I know people don't like talking about that, but in terms of standards of what manhood for men is making more money than women. They put their manhood in money and sex. And when a man falls short, especially I'll say Black men, because that's all I have experience with, don't have the money, they lose a sense of self in their manhood.
Yeah.
And that's all that they play, because that's all they build their manhood around. Women are asking them to start elevating themselves in a social emotional arena. And men have difficulty doing that. They'll be like, oh, I'll do X, Y, and Z for money. They'll fight, fight fire, literally, climb roofs to, make money. But you ask them to become more self-aware and social emotional so they can deal with them on a different level, and they refuse to do that. So I think that's where some of that disconnect come from, because a lot of women can live, they don't necessarily need a man as much as they did in the past for financial fulfillment. They can do that on their own. So now they're asking them to step outside of that mindset and come into a different shift of mindset of how you're going to interact with me. And men are struggling being able to make that shift.
And that's what I was trying to talk about. Mistaken, they call those men egalitarian, who cannot see themselves beyond the sole provider, the stereotypical patriarch. They're struggling.